Let me tell you a story about Flowers' power trips and federal subpoenas. A story so absurd, you'll swear it had to be fiction. But every twist, every unhinged flyer, and every glitter-covered tribunal was painfully real for the residents of Maple Glen. When my wife, Rachel, and I bought our home in this seemingly peaceful cul-de-sac, we thought we were stepping into suburban bliss. The houses were tidy, the lawns were symmetrical, and the HOA, while strict, seemed manageable. That's until Rachel planted 6 rose bushes under the living room window, harmless, right, colourful, fragrant, and in her words, emotionally necessary. Then came the letter. Bold red letters across the envelope. Urgent HOA violation. The fine $300 for unauthorized botanical enhancements. We laughed. Thought it had to be a clerical mistake. Rachel didn't laugh long. See, my wife isn't just any homeowner. She's a federal prosecutor for the Department of Justice specializing in HOA-related fraud. If Karen, from the next block, tries to invent laws out of thin air, Rachel's the one who ends up prosecuting them in real court. But we weren't trying to start a war. Not yet. So we did the neighborly thing, went to the HOA meeting, brought photos, receipts, and a very polite tone. And that's when we met Barbara Elmsworth, Vice President of the HOA, possessor of 3 clipboards, 1 dramatic haircut, and absolutely 0 chill. Barbara peered at us like we'd planted explosives, not flowers. Roses attract bees. She sniffed. Bees are dangerous to children. We're simply protecting the neighborhood. No citation. No rule cited. Just a vague reference to something called the Aesthetic Cohesion Clause. When Rachel asked to see the bylaw, Barbara smirked. That's internal residents aren't authorized to review internal HOA protocols. And that was the moment we realized we weren't dealing with a mistake. We were dealing with a narcissist, drunk on power, backed by a HOA board that either feared her or owed her. Over the next 2 weeks, Barbara escalated. Our mailbox builder issued, and completely standard, was tagged with orange tape and labeled out of code. The violation. A supposed 2-degree tilt, eyeballed by her cousin, Greg, an ex-plumber, with a crooked measuring tape and a god complex. We measured it ourselves, it was level, but that didn't stop her. Barbara had begun building what I can only call a neighborhood surveillance force. Older residents with nothing to do and too many opinions started patrolling the streets with clipboards. They fined our dog for excessive tail energy and our neighbor Steve's porch for overly confident gnomes. It would have been funny if Barbara hadn't then tried to sue us. One morning, we got a cease and desist letter. It accused us of defamation for mentioning our flower fine on the community Facebook page. The letterhead Elmsworth and Elmsworth, legal advocates. But Rachel, being Rachel, looked it up immediately. There was no such firm. The address listed was a UPS store. The email, a Gmail, and the bar number didn't exist. Barbara had invented a fake law firm, but she didn't stop there. At the next HOA meeting, she waved her fake lawsuit around like it was the 10 Commandments, declaring that legal threats against the HOA will be treated as acts of hostility. Rachel, calm as a cat, took out her phone and hit record. "Would you mind repeating that for the record?" Barbara blinked. For the first time, her armor cracked. It was subtle at first. Whispers at the meeting. Raised eyebrows. A neighbor whispered, "Wait. Is she actually suing people?" Barbara brushed it off. Legal confidentiality, she claimed, but she had no idea that the woman she was threatening was a federal prosecutor, building a quiet little case folder in her home office, page by page. The turning point came when Rachel pulled property records and discovered Barbara had recently refinanced her house. The reason: HOA debts. She was draining her own resources to keep power. And like all tyrants on a decline, she panicked. Barbara upped the ante. She printed neighborhood flyers, claiming she was now the official legal liaison for Maple Glen HOA, complete with a logo and a new firm name: Maple Glen Legal Advocacy, PLLC, no business license, no legal standing. But now, full-blown fantasy. At the next HOA meeting, she brought a consultant, a man in an ill-fitting suit named Dan, who claimed he was a legal advisor. When Rachel casually asked which law school he attended, Dan said the streets. Then started fanning himself with the agenda. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't terrifying. At that meeting, Barbara banged a ceremonial gavel so hard it broke. She accused residents of aesthetic sabotage and warned of anarchy via flower bed. Then Rachel stood up. "I prosecute HOA fraud for the Department of Justice. You've impersonated legal counsel, fabricated cease and desist threats, and misused community funds. You're looking at federal charges." Silence. Dan spilled his water, and Barbara. She shrieked that Rachel was out of order, then stormed out, yelling about suburban sovereignty. That night, anonymous notes showed up under our door. "Thank you. Please don't stop." They included copies of other fake fines for having flashing lights with excessive confidence, ornament imbalance, and my personal favorite, spiritually dissonant wind chimes. But here's where it goes from funny to full-blown insane. Barbara started a rival, JoJo. She called it the Community Integrity Alliance, a religious nonprofit dedicated to restoring spiritual curb appeal. She converted her basement into a command center, complete with a projector and PowerPoint slides, titled "The Moral Collapse of Maple Glen." Her followers wore badges, titles like Aesthetic Sentinel and Compliance Herald. She held fake tribunals, issued spiritual violation slips. People got cited for porch hubris and insufficient driveway gravitas. She even declared our street a covenant zone. I'm not making this up. When Rachel checked the state registry, it got worse. Barbara had filed her shadow HOA as a religious nonprofit, a 501c3. It gave her tax sheltering and a defense of religious freedom. She was running a suburban cult with lanyards. We called a community meeting. Rachel stood in front of 70 residents and said, "This isn't quirky anymore. This is organized coercion, disguised as spiritual leadership." Then she handed out documents. Misused funds, fake legal documents, emails, encouraging residents to tattle on each other, PayPal donation logs for something called the Victory Fund. The DOJ was done waiting. A week later, a black government sedan pulled into the neighborhood. Out stepped a real federal agent, badge suit, calm voice, no drama. He knocked on Barbara's door. "Ma'am, we're investigating reports of unauthorized legal activity, fraudulent, non-profit filings, and illegal surveillance." She blinked and asked, "Is this about the mulch?" It wasn't. The agent handed her a subpoena. Her basement, searched her shed, broken into by the FBI. Inside a binder titled Operation Curb Harmony. Fake citations, laminate badges, squirrel-shaped cameras, glittery flowcharts of aesthetic hierarchies. Barbara was charged with wire fraud, tax evasion, impersonation of legal counsel, and operating an unlicensed civil tribunal. She was arrested trying to invoke neighborhood sovereignty while tripping over her own lawn flamingo. Yes, that happened. And the best part? She insisted on representing herself in court. Showed up in a burgundy robe, carrying binders with scented dividers, labeled Lawful Lawn Order. The jury took 38 minutes, guilty on every count. The judge banned her from holding any position of authority forever, even bake sales. She was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Rachel didn't celebrate. She just went back to tending her roses, no fines attached. As for the neighborhood, peaceful again. Kids ride bikes. People hang wind chimes without fear. And the HOA passed a new bylaw. No member shall ever again declare themselves a spiritual overseer of patio decor. Oh, and Rick, the fake consultant. He's now taking real paralegal classes. He still wears his old Minister of Mulch sash to Halloween party. We're letting him live. That down slowly. So yeah, next time someone tells you the HOA is just about lawn heights and paint colors, remember? Maple Glen. And if you've ever been fined for bird feeders, mailbox angles, or spiritual mulch alignment, I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below and tell us, what's your HOA horror story? Let's talk about it, because power trips should never be part of Neighborhood Watch.